About a month ago, I got the bright idea to buy this abandoned Ram SRT-10 truck, rip out the Dodge Viper engine, and replace it with the supercharged 6.2-liter V8 from a Demon. We got it to run, we even got it to drive, albeit not very far.
You got a bunch of stuff in the back.
But now's when the hard work begins. We have 1 week to get this truck 100% roadworthy. And considering the engine bay looks like this, the tires, they look like, well, this. Along with the fact that most of the parts that need to be installed on the truck are laying in the bed, we got quite the task ahead of us. Now, it probably goes without saying that we're not gonna get very far until we take care of these just atrocious wheels and tires. The tires themselves, they're blown out and dry rotted from sitting so long. The lug nuts, they're so ballooned that I can't even fit a socket on them anymore. And then one of the wheels themselves, that has a crack in it, so I'm sure it'd be leaking from that, you know, even if it didn't have gaping holes in the tires. Quite ironically, the only good tire on the truck is the spare. While there is a full cosmetic overhaul in the works, including a color change along with a 6 set of wheels, I don't want to ruin that surprise just yet. So for now, we're gonna send the stock wheels off and have these refinished so we have something to roll around on in the meantime. With our wheels on the way to being taken care of, now we can move on to something a bit more fun in the suspension. Not only is most of the suspension on the truck just rusty and rotted out, as you would expect from 20-year-old parts, we have this aftermarket helper spring that I believe is to assist in towing. Given that's not our primary goal anymore, we definitely don't need things like that on the truck. And then there's the fact that it just sat a little too high for my taste. You can finally say it.
Stand life.
It's finally appropriate. Not only is this just a massive heap of suspension parts in front of me gonna get rid of all that rusty old garbage, it's gonna drop the truck 4 inches in the back and 2 in the front.
Are you sure there's gonna be enough?
I'm positive it's gonna be fine. From what I understand, this is about as low as we can go without severely affecting the drivability. I think it's gonna give us the perfect balance of look, all without, you know, laying frame every time we cross a speed bump. Of the suspension, I think the front's gonna be the easiest to accomplish. The kit consists of some lowering springs, some shocks from QA1, new bump stops, new sway bar end links. And while most of the kit is a direct bolt-on, we are gonna get to hack the truck up just a little bit. The first bit of hacking we get to do is demolition of the stock bump stops. These guys are made for doing truck-like activities at truck-like ride heights, and they also happen to be welded to the frame. Now, since we're laying the truck on the ground with some sick, nasty stance, these lower control arms, they're gonna sit a lot closer to this frame, meaning this just monstrosity of a bump stop, it's no longer gonna cut it. Instead, we're gonna be using these guys, which on some level, kind of feels like having a bump stop for the sake of having one. But now that we got rid of the one thing that was preventing us from lowering it in the front, we can actually install the fun parts. I do find it at least somewhat comical that one of the only suspension parts on this truck that's been replaced, maintained, anything, are the front struts, which we're now replacing. The Bilstein shocks we pulled off the truck are actually really high quality units, and if I was staying with more of a stock style ride height, I'd probably just go with a brand new set of those. But being that we're lowering the truck down a bit, I thought it best to go with a set of QA1 shocks that are spec'd for a truck of this weight, at this height, and also have a bit of adjustability. Now, while there are a ton of advantages to running what we'll call a borderline custom shock, there are a few drawbacks. The main one being that while there's virtually unlimited options to customize length, adjustability, and valving, they're not made for any one specific chassis. And while they do make a ton of different adapters for both the top and the bottom of the shock, they're never gonna fit quite as well as something that's made specifically for your chassis. At the end of the day though, it really just comes with the territory of running a shock like this. You just gotta pick which adapters are closest to fitting your application and make it work. Our springs, on the other hand, these guys are a direct replacement. Everything transfers right over from our stock springs. They fit perfectly. They're just a little bit shorter. Now that we got the main portion of our front lowering kit installed, there's just one more, call it supporting accessory we need to take care of. This is our crusty old factory sway bar, and these are somehow even crustier factory end links, which work perfectly at a stock ride height. But since we're no longer at a stock ride height, we need to swap out to these guys, which are basically the same thing, just a bit shorter. This will make sure our sway bar is not putting any weird tension on our suspension now that we've changed the geometry a bit. And speaking of changed geometry, one thing that's going to be significantly hampered by the fact that we just slammed the truck is our ability to align it. So to make up for that and gain some of our alignment adjustability back, we're going to slot the control arm brackets that are attached to the frame. And that will be a wrap, at least on the front suspension. And I know we can't put it on the ground and see how cool it looks and check out our fresh new stance. And I know you're really itching to do that, Fernando.
I got a problem right here.
What's the problem?
Why I don't see like a pretty aggressive camber?
I guess technically we could loosen up this upper control arm, shove that all the way in. But my only concern with that is that we'd end up looking like a real stance loser. You know? Now this front suspension, it was pretty easy. It's not that much different than the car stuff we're working on day in and day out. The rear though, none of this looks at all familiar.
At least I don't have rust in my car.
I'm sure I can find some rust on that thing. After all, it was underwater. I know you're just trying to defend your stance here, but either way, we got to figure out what we're doing with this whole leaf spring deal with our straight rear axle. I mentioned way back in the first video that this is my first truck project, and as that would imply, I have never touched this type of suspension. But if there's one thing I am sure of, it's that we got all the right parts, including new leaf springs. We've got the instruction manuals, which for once we actually are gonna have to read. I guess the only thing left to do is tear into it and see what happens.
You got your tetanus shot?
Got it, 1998, baby. Yeah, this isn't a save the old parts type situation. Well, in real time, I'm learning what a lot of you guys watching probably have known all along. This truck suspension stuff, it's easy. This is way nicer than working on cars. For those of you guys like me who haven't done a lot of working on trucks, the leaf spring's connected to the frame in the back, and then again up here in the front. It was, at least, tied to the axle with these U-bolts. Once we pop those bolts out, then we can remove the very, very heavy and awkward stock leaf spring and move on to some more fun stuff.
Is it heavy or you're weak?
Let's see. Let's see. Come on.
It's too rusty, you know. I'm good. You know what? Never mind. I believe you.
Anyway, this job's gonna get split up into basically two different sides, the lowering parts and the traction parts. If we were just lowering the truck, we'd probably have the thing knocked out in about an hour. It would just consist of new leaf springs, our QA1 shocks, and a set of drop shackles from Beltec. All that stuff, it's as simple as removing the old parts from the truck and bolting the new parts on. Where things might get just a little complicated though, is this traction bar setup. With these, instead of simply replacing parts like we are on the lowering side of things, we're adding an entirely new system to the truck. The basic idea how these work is they give you essentially unlimited adjustability as far as tensioning and preloading the rear end. And I might not know much about trucks, but one thing I do know, they suffer from horrible wheel hop. They have all kinds of issues hooking up at the drag strip, and these are a step in the right direction of correcting all those issues. One thing we will do before we try to tackle the traction bar setup is build up a little good installed juju, if you will, by knocking out a few of these easy to replace components. Specifically the shocks and the drop shackles. Now this might be the best visual representation of just how much we're lowering this truck. At this very moment, both these shocks are fully extended, our bottoms are lined up, and this shows you just how much height we're taking out of this truck. And while the difference on the drop shackles isn't quite as drastic, these are just one of the components that's gonna help us take some height out of the truck. I believe the rest of our lowness, if lowness is even a word, is gonna come from the springs.
Low rider setup or just
50-50. Okay. This is almost comical. This is all the way down on the driver's side and the passenger side's still stock. I hope it comes across in the video, but that rear axle is cocked by like, well, I guess 4 inches. That's exactly how far cocked it is because that's how much we're lowering it. I am genuinely kind of concerned though that we're not going to be able to put this leaf spring on until we get the other side squared away too. It's at such a ridiculous angle right now. Yeah, you know what? This will be a lot easier if everything's just straight again. Interesting. I don't know what small brain, no engineering skill having type of YouTube mechanic worked this design up. What type of design, you might ask? Well, the kind where you can't get the drop shackle bolt out because it drives straight into the battery. This was a real gem in the engineering department in this place. All right, we're back on. That looks a little better. Now let's figure out those traction bars. First thing we have to do here is press out the front bushing in our brand new leaf spring, and I'm hopeful that since it is new, it won't fight us too bad. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, it didn't take long to find our first bit of incompatibility between our traction setup and our lowering setup. This plastic or nylon roll pin. This needs to sit down on the leaf spring, but because of this travel limiter on the leaf spring, our cowl track's only going down about that far, and then it just slams into it. Now, I usually wouldn't advocate to just start hacking random stuff off of a leaf spring, but one of the main jobs of this piece is to make sure the leaf springs don't get misaligned. But with our cowl tracks installed, no matter what position it's in, it's going to prevent those springs from doing exactly that. Now we got that out of the way, we can install the spring, which is definitely a two-person job. Come on, baby, get in the hole. I think we're in. There we go. Don't you just love it when it goes right in? Next up on the puzzle that is this traction bar system, the lower axle mount bar thingy, I don't know what to call it. It's this piece, that's what I'm talking about. Name aside, all we have to do now is lube them up, crank them down, and then we can install our actual traction rod, which connects this front pivot joint to the bracket we just put on the axle. And with that, we're done the rear suspension. Except for the fact that we can't tighten a single bolt because you need to do it at ride height, loaded, and we don't have wheels. But it looks cool.
This thing looks pretty low.
It does look low.
Yeah.
Okay, so the suspension's completely unloaded now. There's no cheating going on here. And look how tucked up inside the bed those wheels are. This is low. No. We'll get back into exactly how this stuff works once we have it on the ground and we can load it and try to make sense of it. But for now, the suspension certainly looks the part, not only in the rear, but the front too. Now, we are still a few days out on getting our wheels back, so we have a little bit of time to kill, which means now's the perfect time to reassemble our engine bay and run test it for real. Well, right after this ad. For as long as I can remember, when it comes to building Japanese cars like Dalt's RX-7 here, or this Evo RS that I'm restoring eventually, I've always hit a roadblock sourcing rare parts, but thanks to Zen Market, the sponsor of today's video, those days are in the past. Zen Market's your one-stop shop for buying parts from Japan. You can shop Super AutoBox, even Yahoo Auctions directly through Zen Market, or if what you're looking for isn't integrated into the Zen Market website, you can simply copy the item link and paste it into the Zen Market search bar. Once you find what you're looking for, Zen Market has a 60-day free storage period so you can shop for more stuff before packaging it all together and shipping it to your home country. Zen Market makes sure your items are well packed and well consolidated so they show up not only in tip-top shape, but cost effectively. They have unreal customer support, 19 different languages, account registrations free, plus they're giving away 750 Zen points, aka 750 yen off the international shipping fee to new members who use the code SCRAPLIFELEE when signing up. So when it's time to get those parts you just can't get anywhere else and hopefully finish the front end of your Japanese project car, remember, Zen Market's got you covered. We've already built our cooling system, our heat exchanger system, and our power steering lines, but we haven't tested any of it. Until now. Most of this work simply consisted of reinstalling all the systems we've already built, but being that we're hopefully at least about to drive the truck for the first time, we did have to go through and take care of a few small things like making sure our coil pack harnesses were secured and away from our steering shaft, buttoning up all of our other wiring, and of course making sure everything on the truck's labeled properly. Yeah, that one was stupid. Let's just forget about that. Now, it wasn't all just reinstalling stuff we've already built. We did get to break out this map sensor adapter block, which let us grab the boost reference source for our fuel pressure regulator. Now it's time. Time to find out just how badly we misengineered stuff. Keep in mind, we haven't ran any coolant through this system. We made every single line from scratch. We haven't done power steering fluid, and we haven't even let the truck get up to operating temperature yet.
Concerning.
I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily nervous, but I do expect to find at least one leak. There just has to be. Occasionally, only occasionally, we'll bring in a professional. And what is this whole like snap-on thing?
It means you give somebody money and you get quality tools and they get to put their kids through college with all the money you spend with them.
Actually, I was referring to this specific tool.
Oh, this pulls the vacuum on the cooling system.
Now, before we start and there's just madness trying to identify any leaks, one thing I can hit a button and turn on is our intercooler pump.
There you go. Does that change pitch?
Yeah.
Big flow. And now it's all changing color?
So what he said is I installed this system perfectly.
Yes.
I am hoping that one day he'll let me use this thing.
Big training manual for that. You're not supposed to put fluid in it before you put...
I've got the grasp of how this works now. Yeah. So that don't look like it's leaking, right?
That's not leaking, man.
Yes, what a perfectly engineered cooling system in this truck. You ready?
I think so.
Thanks for the confidence, all right? Everything looks good on here. We're just going to wait for it to get fully up to 10 to get its first true heat cycle in this chassis. Make sure nothing's leaking, and then I guess we're kind of good to put it back together and drive it down the road. One small issue we do have, our fuel pressure is a little high. It's a 67, 68 pounds. We want it down closer to 50. So I'm going to adjust this while Fernando and you guys go over there and let me know when it hits 50. Is it way down at all?
60, 58, 55, 50, 48.
Perfect teamwork. Excellent. All right. Now we wait for leaks. Truth be told, I am really shocked that we haven't even found one leak in this thing yet. Everything you see on the floor, that's from us filling it. Nothing looks wet. Nothing's spraying anywhere. I'm 110% positive that at some point, something's going to go horribly wrong. Whether it's the first time at the track, I don't know. Something's coming.
What about if it's not? And everything goes 100% good with this truck? It's a truck, not a race car.
Well, today it's going to be a race car because we can't open the door since it's on the lift. I think, by any metric, we completed a heat cycle, but it wouldn't, you know, be a true heat cycle. We don't rev the out of it, right, Fernando? Yes, don't even answer that question. But I think that's about it for now. What we're gonna do is let it cool down overnight, come back in tomorrow morning, see if any new leaks developed, and then we'll do it all over again. And hopefully by then, Fernando, the wheels show up.
And burnout time, right?
I can't believe I'm about to say no to this, but we do have to get it tuned first.
Come on!
Then it's burnout time. I promise burnouts are coming. I promise. You have my word.
We normally have good news and bad news, but in this case, it's just bad news and bad news.
You know, I'm generally pretty positive, I think. I wish there was a good spin to put on what we're about to talk about here, and I don't believe there is. It's before 8 o'clock in the morning, and we have the borescope out. There's generally never a positive reason to have this tool out. Just like a compression tester, it's never a good thing. My plan this morning was to come in and check out the heat exchanger, the radiator, the cooling system, make sure there's no power steering fluid leaking, all that flawless. Turns out though, when you do run it for more than 30 seconds, we've got a little problem. There's oil coming from somewhere, don't know where, on the top of the motor, and it is a bad leak. It's pouring down the transmission. I have no clue, and I mean no clue where it's coming from. You can just see piles of oil on top of the engine, and you can see the top of the engine block is just glossy, nasty. It's a mess. And just if by chance the borescope wasn't clear enough, this is what's puddled up on top of our engine. An oil leak on this on its own is bad enough, but if you look really closely, it looks like there might be a drop or two of coolant in there as well. Now this brings a few things to mind, and we can discuss it as I'm rolling up my industrial plumbing size borescope. One, coolant and oil leak mixed, that is not ideal at all. Two, the only way we're gonna get a look at this is if we pull the supercharger, so guess what? That's next. And three, and this one is the one thing that I'm very confident of this morning, this is entirely Fernando's fault. It was something along the lines of, what if everything goes great and there's no problems?
What about if it's not? And everything goes 100% good with this truck? I was trying to be positive at that point.
Well, you positively f***ed me, all right? Jokes aside, we just kind of have to stop BSing at this point, pull the blower off, to see exactly how screwed we are. All right, the good news, these things are incredibly easy to remove. It took us all 30 minutes of work to prep the thing to come off. It's unbolted, it's ready to go. The bad news, they're so freaking heavy that, well, this feels a little sketchy. I know it really shouldn't, everything's fine. Just weird to see your Supercharger suspended in the air from a Harbor Freight ratchet strap and a forklift. Oh yeah, there we go. Come on down. Perfect. Flawless blower removal. Sort of. Let's see what we got. I mean, clearly, first and foremost, there's pulled up oil on both sides of the cam hump in the block, the driver's side and the passenger side, which is kind of weird. A lot of it on the passenger side is towards the back, not so much towards the front. Now, my number one concern here was that we had a leak in head gasket. Not that I thought it'd be the case, but we did run this thing without coolant. We didn't do it for long, but I suppose there's always that chance that it finally bit me after doing that for so long and we popped the head gasket. But if that were the case, I'd really expect to see some oil pulled up here on the lip of the block in between the cylinder head, because there is a little divot there that would have to fill up before it started running into the block. I don't see that, so that's good. The question is though, where is all this coming from? Even the top of these coolant lines have a little bit of oil residue. I do suppose that could be residual. It's not super heavy, but the only thing that sits above that is the blower. And the bottom of this is a little moist. You can see it's damp at the back. We'll definitely either replace that gasket or at least snug it up. But I could be wrong in thinking this, but I don't think that these even have enough oil in them to create the amount of oil we have on top of our engine right now. So for now, we'll put that one in the possibility category. The only other places, at least I think, that oil could be coming from under here are our VVT solenoid, which is no longer used, and our MDS plug. Some of the other Gen 3 Hemis, not the Hellcats, have displacement on demand, and those 4 holes are filled with solenoids, but on the Hellcats, they're just plastic plugs. Now, if it were any of those 4 plugs, I would expect there to be oil all around it and probably only on that side, but we have oil on both sides of that cam hump, and that's the weird part. So what that suggests to me, it's either multiple of those MDS plugs leaking, which I kind of find unlikely, the VVT solenoid, or something we haven't figured out yet. All right, might be something, might be absolutely nothing, but we got to thinking after standing around for about an hour, you know, like King of the Hill style. Yep. And of course, doing a bit of reading, which is probably the more important part there, that it could be leaking from the Supercharger, specifically through these guys. These are vents for the inside of the Supercharger, and I guess there's something wrong in there. It could force oil out. So what we're gonna do is drain the Supercharger oil, and if it's low, I think we found our issue. If not, well, back to the drawing board. Come on. I actually want this to be low. I really do. I'm no expert. I think we've all established that, but I do believe this qualifies as low. Yeah, 110% false alarm. I'll explain. One thing I haven't done before is change the oil on a root style blower. It's supposed to be essentially lifetime oil. They say 100,000 miles. My engines don't typically last 100,000 miles, so by default, lifetime oil. Figure, like say a differential or a transmission, this is our fill, this is our drain. It fills up to there, you pop the bottom one, it all runs out. Turns out it's not at all the case. By complete accident, I turned this thing over to get a look at the bottom of it, and oil started running out when I left the drain plug off. Most of it onto the floor. Then I decided to grab a cup, and sure enough, the right amount of oil came out. So next up on the list of ideas to try to figure out what's going on here, crank it and see if we can figure out where the oil's coming from. Hit it, Tim. I don't see anything at all. It is possible that just cranking it like that, we weren't able to build up enough oil pressure to push oil out of wherever it's coming from here. But regardless of the reason, I don't think we have any choice but to just reseal everything.
Oh, you scratch it.
Don't even start. I'm not in the mood, Fernando. This is supposed to be when we're, throwing these bad boys on the truck, the triumphant music's playing in the background, and then we go whip it out onto the highway. That's clearly not happening. I was a little on the fence about the black, but I'm digging these things. They look sick.
Way better than expected.
Truthfully. Now, the chrome wheels on the SRT10s, they do look awesome, but pretty much every one of these wheels had curbing. They were cracked. The polish was pitting. It wasn't even all that bright. Long term, I'm definitely not planning on running black wheels on the truck, but I figure since these are just temporary until we get our nice set of wheels after we paint it, why not? Let's just change it up. We already knew the one wheel was cracked and not holding air, but after we sent it to the wheel shop, they came back and said all 4 of them were bent. They had to do straightening work to every single one of them. Then they powder coated them, threw us on a new set of Toyos, and sent them back all for like $800, which is a smoking deal if you ask me. Now, just because we're waiting on a few seals, gaskets, and other parts for the engine doesn't mean we're gonna stop working on the truck. There's one more piece of suspension that we need to take care of that I honestly overlooked until we dug into the suspension. We got all this fancy new suspension on the truck, traction bars, all kinds of cool stuff, and then that. These rusty, ratty, truck hasn't moved in 5 years because it hasn't, looking brakes. Honestly, I bet they'd work fine. They'd probably even clean up a little bit, but something about having all that new suspension and putting a new set of wheels on here at some point, hopefully, and then slapping them over rusty brake rotors just didn't sit right with me. So we're gonna stick a fresh set on it. With these guys, we're really not doing anything special. Don't let the rest of the truck confuse you. It's just a set of centric blank rotors and a set of basic power stop pads. The reason I wanted to keep it simple with the brakes, at least for now, is depending on how much I like this truck, once we get it painted and done, I'm thinking about trying to adapt Hellcat calipers to it. I think it'd be a cool idea, but it's gonna take a lot of work, so I don't wanna spend thousands of dollars doing the brakes now, only to have to do them all over again.
Up.
One more thing we need to do before we can throw the wheels on and see how the truck looks, and we get to use my favorite tool. I swear it worked fine on the other side. Anyway, what I was trying to do there, and what I'd already successfully done on the other side of the truck, is cut the bump stops. From the factory, these are significantly longer than what we cut them down to, and now that we lowered the truck, we don't want it to be riding on these. It'd be an extremely harsh ride, so we just sliced 90% of it off.
You're struggling.
I'm not struggling at all. Let's see. Now we had to replace those ballooned out lug nuts with some nice black ones. $15, Amazon. Come on, drop.
I mean, why it looks higher front than the rear?
Because of the independent suspension.
Oh.
It will settle down when it rolls.
Or,
No, it's got to roll.
oh, those brakes are fresh. It did drop, yeah. Dude, all right, now this thing looks sick. All right, I know this has generally not been great news this episode, and we hopefully will remedy that soon, but this is still a big old W, right? Can't not be happy. I don't care how the rest of this has turned out. Looks-wise, this is awesome. Now, as much as I want to sit here and just stare at this truck all night, we do have one more bit of work we have to do in adjusting the cowl tracks. All there is to it is spinning this rod in until there is some, and by some I mean very little preload on this spring. This is exactly how much you need to get started with, and there's unlimited adjustability to these. So what we'll do is, when we have the truck on the road, which unfortunately, Fernando,
It's not gonna happen.
is not today, we'll try to launch it, try to have some fun with it, and then see what adjustments we need to make. This week we've been grinding to get this truck done. I said in the beginning of the video that we had 1 week to get it fully roadworthy, and unfortunately there's no sugarcoated, we completely failed that mission. We were supposed to be at the dyno back in Ohio at Big 3 Racing with this truck tomorrow. The parts we need to fix this thing won't be here for like 3 or 4 days. The math ain't math in here. We're not making it to the dyno this time. But hey, that's just working on cars. Grand scheme of things, we've been really lucky with this truck so far. So one little, I'm sorry, not so little oil leak we can't be too mad at.
It's
right?
small inconvenience.
As thrilled as I am at the way this truck looks, and trust me, I am thrilled. I was genuinely looking forward to hitting the road with you guys in this video, but the only play now is to order up the parts we need, get right back to it in next video. I promise we're going cruising. I mean, Fernando, what could possibly go wrong, right?
0.
Yeah, this isn't a jinx, it's just facts. Nothing's going wrong, we'll ride next episode. Oh my God.
I don't think that they're supposed to go that way.
Why'd you go right for the rod? Is there like any specific reason?
Way too early for this.